Welcome to our 15th annual meeting, The Gaps in Wealth, The Gaps in Health, created by racial divides, ethnic divides, divides based on place, economic, are just intolerable. And the inequalities that arise make people sicker. We have all the statistics about that, and affect all indicators of well-being. I believe in my heart that the change we need and seek will come from the leadership, talent, and passion that is inside this room. I know who you are. I know what you do. I know where you came from.
This is an amazing, wonderful time, and I'm really honored and pleased to be here to talk to you about the opportunities that we have, a moment in time that we can take advantage of. So many of you are involved in health, and I actually think that health is leading the way in terms of redefining what it means to be a healthy individual and what it is as a society that we have to do to ensure that everybody can reach their full potential. And reaching your full potential has a lot to do with how healthy you are. And it really is fitting that people who come out of health, people who come out of public health, people who work close to the ground and have always understood that when you began a conversation with someone about what was going on with their health, that you couldn't stay in a health discussion because they quickly took you someplace else. They talked about how they really didn't have time to focus on that because they didn't have a job, or the job they had demanded that they be there always and making doctor's appointments or taking time to exercise or do so many things just were not compatible with what they saw as what they had to do to put food on the table. We have to understand the power of place. The power of place in terms of the negative impact that it can be, and the power of place in terms of the positive impact that it can be. And that there are systematic things that we can do through policy and strategy and practice that make it easier for all of us to be able to live healthy and productive lives. By 2018, 45% of all jobs in this country will require at least an associate's degree. 27% of African Americans have it, 26% of Latinos, and 14% of recent Latino immigrants. How are we going to meet the challenge of the future if the people who are going to be the future are being left behind? We're at a point in which America can see its future, and it's a 5-year-old Latina. It's a 12-year-old black boy. It's a 17-year-old Asian girl. It's also a poor white young man living in a rural community. And in many ways, the future is all young people, and all young people are at risk of being left behind. America can see its future, and it needs to figure out how to invest in that future so that America's tomorrow will be bright. What we have seen is that this conversation about equity is really growing up. And what we've got to do now is really add some meat to it. We have to add some meat to it as practitioners, as funders, as policy advocates. All of us have to figure out what it is that we do going forward. We're not a poor nation, and we need to stop acting like one. And we need to acknowledge that at the moment, we do not have the political will to spend the dollars that we need to spend in order to solve our problems, one by one, silo by silo. So we need to, every time we spend dollars, make sure that we are addressing the equity issues. Infrastructure is a wonderful place to start. One of the things that we've been saying at PolicyLink for a long time is that where you live is a proxy for opportunity in America. Where you live. You tell me where you live, and not only can I tell you how long you will live, which the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation has demonstrated, but I can tell you the kind of access you have to high quality education, whether or not you live near a job, whether your community represents a natural job network that can connect you to a job. Where you live determines whether or not, if you're lucky enough to own a home, whether or not you have anything you can pull out of that home in case of emergency. We've been talking about that for a long time. We're getting really smart about if place is a proxy for opportunity, let's make sure that every place provides opportunity. We're at a point where equity is no longer just the moral thing to do, it's the only thing to do. Equity is the superior growth model. Thank you.
We have to find a way to commit to work with our neighbors and our fellow citizens in order to get anything done.
We don't come together neighbor to neighbor. We don't come together in government to government. We don't come together church to church. I mean, you know, we just don't come together.
I work for ROC DC. I organize restaurant workers. In the DC area, there's about 40,000 restaurant workers, and almost 90% don't have access to health insurance through their employers, and close to 70% don't have access to paid sick days. Oftentimes what you see in the restaurant industry with the need to continue growing sales more and more every year is that the workers get more to do with less.
There are no silver bullets for a lot of the inequities that we're talking about. And it takes organizing, and it takes building mass to get clout.
You've got to think about who are the people who are in the same boat with you and have their back. Don't let other people isolate you from them. That will help us a lot going forward. This is the first time in my lifetime that I have seen everything on the table for discussion, and we need to understand the uniqueness of this moment, because if we don't get the uniqueness of this moment, we will miss it. I think the transformational tool at the moment is the changing demographics, because the changing demographics really bring some urgency to what it is we're going to do. We've got to build the relationships. We can't build the relationships by beating up on people, which is why I keep coming back to this inclusive equity language that has a place in it for everybody, because when I talk about equity, I don't want people who are white to think this is not about them. I gave a talk within the past year about equity, and I started off talking about poor white people. I did that because as I looked at the audience, I thought, they're not going to quite get it if I start off talking about anything else, and that's why I did it. But after it, a woman came up to me, a young white woman. She came up to me with tears rolling down her face, and she says, you know, I go to these meetings all the time, hearing about the plight of African Americans and Latinos, and the facts always relate to me, but nobody ever calls my name. Nobody ever calls out my situation. And I was so glad that I did that. So let's really focus on building those relationships.
We'd also like to thank you, the participants, those of you who are here, for being here, because we know that this work cannot be accomplished in silos. And I think it's the folks here in this room who will take this work to the next level. I am inspired by that. It's very clear to me that that's what's happening. Things don't happen overnight, it takes time. And this is a milestone. This is truly a milestone for us. And the CHF is very proud to be a part of this process.
So all I can say is onward.